Welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Kristen Welker. We begin with breaking news out of Southern California. These are live pictures of the smoke above Los Angeles County, where fast-moving wildfires are burning out of control as emergency officials struggle to combat a lethal combination of powerful winds and dry conditions. As you can see here, entire neighborhoods have been leveled by these fires. At least 2 people are reported dead so far, and more than 80,000 have been forced to evacuate. Hundreds of thousands are without power and millions more are in the danger zone. So right now, local, state and federal officials are fighting 4 major fires burning along the coast, which have already burned thousands of acres. Some of the worst devastation so far from the Palisades fire, which is now the most destructive in L.A. history. It's now more than 11,000 acres, destroying at least 1,000 buildings between the Santa Monica Mountains and the Pacific Ocean. It is 0% contained. And there's also the Eaton fire, which has killed at least 2 people today. It's exploded in size, going from 3,000 acres to more than 10,000. In the Pasadena and Altadena area, it's also close to 0% contained. President Biden, who was in Southern California before the wildfires broke out, was briefed by emergency officials this afternoon, along with Governor Gavin Newsom. They called the situation right now historic.
What we saw here in the last 24 hours is unprecedented. I've never seen anything like this. Fires driven by the type of winds that we saw, up to 100 miles an hour.
We knew there was a potential for a significant threat to our constituents due to the weather event. High winds. I've never seen the winds in my 25-year career. So we lean forward as much as possible.
Now, one positive development in the efforts to contain these fires, Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass says the fire department helicopters have resumed air operations. They had been grounded earlier because of the extreme weather conditions. The size and strength of these fires was matched only by the speed at which they spread. Some evacuees were forced to abandon their cars in the middle of the road just to make it to safety. My colleague Jacob Soboroff, who grew up in the Palisades, described just how devastating this fire has been for the community he calls home.
In this town, the staples of the community are gone. The 2 grocery stores, doctor's offices, the dry cleaners, the local public library, several schools are gone, and countless homes. I dread to know the number when it's all said and done. I think that many people wonder what a worst-case scenario would look like in the event of something like the big one, the earthquake. This is far beyond what I ever imagined as a lifelong resident of Los Angeles.
NBC's Steve Patterson is in Altadena, California, and NBC meteorologist Bill Cairns joins me right here in studio. Steve, I want to start with you. What's the very latest there on the ground?
Well, Kristen, I can echo what Jacob said. The damage here, the devastation as the sun rose today, unbelievable, but firefighters are still in it. We are still facing these wind-driven flames, really in the smoldering that we've been seeing in the ruins of homes. You can see some of those behind me, and then you take a look over here. This is brand new. This just started a few minutes ago. This home obviously was fully engulfed as we saw it earlier. It started in the attic. It started spreading to the rest of the house. The fire department got on scene, essentially put it out and left, but it was clear that the fire wasn't all the way out. It's because firefighters are stretched so thin that they're effectively, as you would imagine, doing triage, right? There's another fire that's just beyond this street, way bigger than the one that's burning here, and that's been happening really consistently all day long in every neighborhood that we've been in this area. Basically street to street, you can see a whole row of homes that have burned down. So the situation is there are way too many fires per firefighter. They are spread out all across this region, battling, as we mentioned, 3 major fires, but these tiny spot fires that pop up in people's homes. It's really tragic to see. Meanwhile, you see neighbors helping neighbors. This neighbor here with the orange bucket, we've been seeing him trying to put protection on homes like the one that's next door so that doesn't spread. But people here are also out of water because the water pressure has been turned on in so many homes, and it's been relieved as the fire spreads from home to home. So a very, very difficult, tragic situation, and one the likes of which we've never seen. Kristen.
The images, Steve, are just heartbreaking, as are the images of those neighbors helping neighbors. As you say, a reminder that this is a community of people that's really just being torn apart. What are the biggest challenges right now for firefighters? You mentioned the challenge with the water supply and obviously the very strong winds.
water supply, as you mentioned, wind. I mean, the aircraft have not been able to get up in the air because the winds have been too strong. Thankfully, there's a lull in that. I'm hoping Bill Cairns will tell you that it's almost over. We can start to sort of feel the winds dying down in this area at least, but it's still enough to spread embers, and those embers attach to more roofs, and those roofs start more fires, and firefighters then have to leave a scene like this, which, you know, was a fully engulfed fire, dampen it out as much as they can, and then move to the next much worse fire. So they are just spread far too thin. It is manpower, it is air power, it is water power. As you mentioned, the pressure in a neighborhood like this, where a lot of the water lines are like PVC pipes spilling out, gushing out, because people didn't have time to turn off their water before they left. So there just isn't that pressure in this area to really combat a fire like this, especially when it's a neighbor with a fire hose trying to do the best he can. It's really almost impossible. And then, of course, I mean, a lot of these firefighters, as on all of these fires, they're working 12 to 36 to 48-hour shifts nonstop. There is no break here, and there really hasn't consistently been, because there's not really a presence locking a place like this down, so neighbors are able to get in and out, which means firefighters have to worry about saving lives, and that's really what they're concerned about at this point, just doing triage, trying to get the worst of the flames down so it doesn't spread further. Kristen?
All right, Steve Patterson there on the ground for us. Thank you so much, Steve. Please continue to stay safe. We really appreciate your great reporting. I want to turn now to Bill Cairns. So, Bill, you heard that plea from Steve Patterson to give us some good news that perhaps conditions are starting to improve. Are they? What's the latest that you're seeing?
Yeah, they're starting to see. The winds are dying down, and they're going to get better, and the firefighters are finally going to start to get the upper hand on some of these blazes. And it's just amazing, you know, what you're watching. Typically, we have these fires. We send our correspondents and reporters out there to show you the stories. And typically, it's a challenge for them to even be in front of live flames. The fact that, like, live shot after live shot, we have reporters that are just driving up, oh, that house is on fire. Then they drive somewhere else, that house is on fire. Just gives you a scope of just how incredible and how widespread this devastation is. And where Steve was located, you notice the one house was on fire. He said the firefighters were there and then they left. What's happening is that the embers are blowing. All attics have vents. What the problem is that somehow the embers are actually getting inside the vents. And once the fires start in the attics, the firefighters are giving up on those houses and moving to other ones because they know they can't contain it once it's inside that roof line. So that's the example of, you know, exactly what you were just watching there. So let's get into the fires, because we have the two huge ones. We've got a couple other little spot ones that are smaller. I haven't heard any huge issues from those. So we're mostly going to focus here on the Eaton fire and also the Palisades fire. The Palisades fire is the one that has by far consumed the most structures. But, you know, we're still waiting to see how the total number is here for the Eaton fire. That's where Steve was located, by the way, right here. That's to the northeast of L.A. And the problem with the Eaton fire is the wind's coming out of the northeast, so it's blowing down straight over L.A., and the air quality has been horrendous all day long, right through downtown. And that's not going to stop. And you notice that the winds have died off, so now it's not like blowing quickly out. Now it's just this, you know, lingering smoke that's just going to sit over the same areas. And the winds are still up in isolated areas. You notice that in downtown L.A. we're at 5. LAX we're at 26-mile-per-hour winds. This is the Palisades fire area. So we still got gusty problems there. Relative humidity, that's the amount of moisture in the air, is still really dry. So that means the fire can burn really fast. You ever put like wet wood in a fireplace, it just doesn't want to burn. If it's really dry, it burns quickly. And when we have low relative humidity like this is just, you know, means the fires can form really quickly. We have another couple hours under the high wind warning. So some of the winds have come down, but not all. By about 6 p.m., all of the winds after the sun sets will come down. And that's when I think our air assets are going to start to get the upper hand and stop the spread of these fires as fast. They'll be able to spot them. They'll be able to see them after the sun sets. And we're going to have the helicopters up there. It's going to be like an armada in the sky trying to get a grip on these fires, because at this point, they haven't been able to do anything.
All right, Bill Cairns, we will continue to check in with you throughout the evening. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Joining me now is Malibu Mayor Doug Stewart. Mayor Stewart, thank you for being here. Our hearts, our thoughts are with you and your entire community right now.
Thank you very much. It's been a tough 24 hours.
I know it has just been devastating there. Can you describe the situation in Malibu at this hour? And is your community right now, have people who need to evacuate evacuated?
Well, a couple of points about this. First off, this is our third fire in 3 months. We've had one virtually every month now. since November. And this is by far the biggest and most devastating. The situation on the ground is the last night as the Palisades fire in Los Angeles City moved over to us on our eastern edge of the Malibu. It's 21 miles long along the coast, and about 1/3 of our city is under mandatory evacuations now. And we've had serious damage on this eastern side. Homes along the beachfronts, homes, the ones in the hills that are above it, major damage. We haven't done an assessment yet, but we know that there's a lot of loss of property there, and there's been injuries. And you ask about mandatory evacuations. About 1/3 of the city is under mandatory evacuations. The rest of the city is on a warning. Hopefully the fire stays where it is, and we don't have to worry about anybody else having to leave and no further damage to the structures other than what's already taking place. But at the moment, it's still push and shove. We're still not out of the woods on this thing yet.
Mayor, we, of course, saw these remarkable images of communities coming together. So first question, did people heed the evacuation orders? And second of all, can you describe for us how your community is coming together to pull through this?
Well, you ask a good question about mandatory evacuations. We've had injuries with people, so far no fatalities, thank goodness. But we've had injuries for people who did not obey the evacuation orders and decided they wanted to stay and maybe fight the fire or just didn't want to leave. And that's the risk that happens out of this. And unfortunately, it takes firefighters away from the fire. It takes first responders away from fighting the fire. So it's not a win-win for anybody to stay behind. But we've only had a few instances like this that I'm aware of so far. But it's sad to see it occur. It's needless. Now, as far as the community goes, one thing about Malibu, we're a small town. We're 20 square miles along some of the most pristine area in the world, if not just in California. And there's only 10,000 permanent residents here. So we know each other. This is a small town, and it's not unlikely to go to the grocery store and see everybody you know. I mean, it's a community. So yes, we're pulling together. It's devastating. It's not what we wanted to have happen here in January 2025, but we'll pull through it. We're Malibu strong. We'll make it work.
Are you getting, Mayor, what you need from the state and federal government? And what is your biggest concern right now in these next several hours?
Well, I think we're getting everything we possibly could ask for. And we've got first responders coming from all over the state and outside of the state to fight the fires. And unfortunately, it's zero containment on the fire that we're facing here right now and the Palisades fires that you're seeing. And I understand there's resources coming from everywhere. So it's not a shortage of resources. But the challenge that we're going to have is going to be the repopulation, rebuilding. This is a major loss of property and residences for our residences. It's not like you can go somewhere else in Malibu and get an apartment or whatever. There's not that many homes. It's going to be tough.
Well, please know that our thoughts are with you, and I think I speak for the entire country. We are all holding you in our hearts right now. We're so sorry for what you're going through. We do hope that they get control of these fires as quickly as humanly possible. Thank you, Mayor. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it very much.
And I'm joined now by Congresswoman Sydney Kamlager-Dove, whose district includes parts of Los Angeles County. Congresswoman, thank you for joining me. Same message to you. I am so sorry for what you and your constituents are going through.
Yeah, this has been a devastating 36 hours. I went to bed last night or tried to calling as many constituents and friends and family members as I could. I finally was able to get in contact with my father later this morning. It is really about just making sure that folks are safe and that they are heeding the evacuation warnings. You know, I represent a portion of South LA, which had 2 fires, and luckily they were contained, but there's zero containment across the largest county in the country, and everyone I know is working as hard as they can to put these fires out.
We know that the winds are an issue. There are also water access problems. What are you hearing from officials in your district? Do they feel as though they have the resources they need to fight these fires?
I think so. I mean, we have seen a coordinated effort, local, federal, state, and county all working together. I was on the phone with the Board of Supervisors, with the governor. We've been in contact with the White House. Everyone is in a concerted effort to do what we can to help. We've sent out a letter, the entire California congressional delegation asking for funds. I mean, remember, Governor Newsom asked for help. President Biden responded immediately. FEMA is on the ground in California. We are working to have firefighters come in from Arizona and Nevada. Department of Defense is lending support. The Reserve, National Guard is serving, is bringing people here. We have air tankers. Last night we were not able to do airdrops because the winds were so strong, and so that put us at a disadvantage. But the cavalry has come.
Well, had just been looking at live pictures, and we're seeing pictures of the flames right now that are engulfing parts of Southern California. I do want to get your response to something that President-elect Trump has posted online, blaming Governor Newsom for this fire. He posted on social media today referring to a governor with an expletive and then saying he refused to sign the water restoration declaration before him that would have allowed millions of gallons of water from excess rain and snow melt from the north to flow daily into many parts of California, including the areas that are currently burning in a virtually apocalyptic way. He is to blame for this, says President-elect Trump. How do you respond to that?
Well, my mother always tells me if you don't have anything nice to say about someone, then just keep your mouth shut. The declaration that he was talking about is about a Northern California issue. The challenges that we've seen in the Pacific Palisades and in Eaton Canyon have to do with a municipal water system that is not designed to fight fires. We were not able to get water to these communities through airdrops because of the wind. So my focus is on containing the fires and getting the people power that we need to fight the fires. And then we can talk about rebuilding and assessing what's next.
And Congresswoman, as you watch this crisis unfold, first of all, are you planning to go home to be there with your constituents? And secondly, what are your biggest concerns?
I do plan to go home. Folks are deeply concerned. I was on the phone with a friend who actually had to drive through Palisades to get to her parents in my district because there was no power, they didn't have water, and there were fires nearby. This is the best argument for why we need the federal government, why we should be fighting from our federal dollars, why we should be making sure that we are federally funding and resourcing agencies rather than cutting them down or dismantling them. When my constituents are calling me, they're asking for help. They're asking for more help, not less help. So we should be talking about how do we fully resource our government rather than how do we dismantle it.
Congresswoman Kamlager-Dove, again, our thoughts are with you and everyone in Los Angeles and California who's being impacted right now. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.